Greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke, and I hope all of you are doing very well today. Continuing with my discussion of the films in the Criterion collection, I would like to talk to you about a film which is Spine number 16, and it's the third film in the so-called Samurai Trilogy, and that film is Duel at GANRYU Island. (1956). This is the third film in the so-called Samurai Trilogy, which is charting the story of the swordsman Miyamoto Musashi. And this is again directed by Hiroshi Inagaki and starring Toshiro Mifune as the character of Miyamoto. One of his very memorable roles, and he is quite stirring in this, as per usual. And we also have the culmination of the so-called rivalry between Miyamoto, or Musashi Miyamoto on the one hand, and Kojiro Sasaki on the other hand. And Koji Tsurota is the actor who plays Kojiro Sasaki, as he did in the earlier film, which is called Duel at Ichijoji Temple. And what a magnificent performance it is. What a continuation, fine continuation of the performance that he gave in that earlier film in the trilogy. So this is the third film in this trilogy, and so this this Blu-ray set is the set that includes all of the other films in the trilogy. So if you want to have a bit of background as to the earlier films, please refer to my earlier videos with respect to the first film and the second film in this trilogy. And with that in mind, my friends, I'd like to talk to you about this film, going into some detail. For those of you who haven't seen the film, I strongly urge that you turn off this video now and try to watch this film. And then when you come back, when you finish the film, you can come back and you can watch this video at your own leisure and pace. Again, I don't want to spoil the film, and there are still plenty of surprises and thrills in this film in store for anyone who has yet to see it and is going to see it for the first time. It is a thrilling adventure and one extremely memorable conclusion to this particular film trilogy. So with that in mind, my friends, I strongly suggest that you turn off this video now and then go out and watch this film, and then come back anytime, and I will still be here, and I'll be very happy to talk with you and to hear your thoughts about this very fascinating film, Duel at GANRYU Island. Okay, my friends, so you're still here, which is hopefully that means that you've seen the film. And my goodness, what a thrilling conclusion this is to the Samurai Trilogy, is it not? I think what we have here, of course, are the resolutions to a number of different plot strands that have been established and further developed in the earlier films. So I think the plot strands are very interesting. So we have the plot involving the character of Otsu, who is played by Kaoru Yachigusa. And then we have the plot strand involving Akemi, played by Mariko Okada. And then we have the plot involving Kojiro Sasaki. And then, of course, we have the main thrust of the plot, as it were, provided by the storyline about Musashi Miyamoto, the Toshiro Mifune character. So in essence, we have these four separate plot strands that develop in their own way, and they fashion themselves out in the context of this third film in the trilogy. And granted, I would say that perhaps these plot strands, I would say that the Otsu plot strand is admittedly maybe the least compelling of these plots, and I'm not sure that that's due to the fault of the actress or the director or anyone concerned. I think it was just the fact that the plot of Otsu and the romance between her and Musashi Miyamoto can only go so far in the context of the story, right? Because the story is in essence about Miyamoto and his character and his spiritual side, the way he has grown not only as a samurai but also as a human being. And in this version of himself, it seems that love and romance is, although maybe he wants it deep down, it seems that it's not really the most immediately important thing with respect to his character, at least as we find him depicted in this third film. And so it can only go so far. Granted, of course, there was a lovely way that the second film ended with respect to the relationship between Otsu and Miyamoto. As you recall, it ended in a rather dramatic cliffhanger fashion with respect to this particular relationship. So in that regard, I think it was nice to see the resolution to a certain degree that was carried out in this third film as between these two characters. Still, there are wonderful elements of melodrama. Characters seem to appear at just the right time to create this kind of romantic tension among characters. For example, Akemi just appears just at the right time to see Otsu in the arms of Miyamoto. So it just causes this extra layer of melodramatic confusion, which is I think it still adds a certain level of innocent charm to the film rather than detracts from the film. And I think there's just enough of it there. There's not too much layering of that kind of melodrama. Everything is, I think, layered just right to give it a nice sense of playfulness and still a sense of dramatic sort of drive, if you will. So, with that in mind, however, I think the Otsu storyline can go only so far. And in fact, I think it is, in many ways, overcome by the more compelling storylines of the other characters. I must say that I have just a complete feeling of awe with respect to the character of Akemi. She really grew over the course of these three films, did she not? If you remember back to her depiction in the first film, I would say that she was somewhat lacking in sympathy. But there was room for her to grow, and oh boy, did she grow by the time we reached the second film. And then she grows even further in terms of nuanced complexity and a very interesting kind of character she becomes by this third film. She is almost nihilistic in terms of her own existence. She has obviously led a very tough life. She has felt the sense and sting of betrayal, perhaps with respect to how her mother treats her or treated her, and how men in her life have treated her. And of course, the only love that she has known is her love of Takezo, not Miyamoto, no, but Takezo. And that is a very important detail that is kept in the film, that she still refers to him by his original given name, Takezo. And the way that her character arc culminates in this film is a revelation. It is dramatically satisfying. It is perfectly in keeping with her character. It is something that has been brewing ever since the events of the first film, and in particular in the second film. And it's a dramatically satisfying conclusion to a memorable, powerful character Perhaps one of the most memorable characters in 1950s Japanese cinema is Akemi, Mariko Okada. And then, of course, we have the towering, mesmerizing performance by Koji Tsuruta with respect to the character of Kojiro Sasaki. Now, Kojiro Sasaki is, again, so handsome and charming and charismatic, and he's slightly flashy, and perhaps he's a bit arrogant, but we never necessarily feel hatred towards him. There's a certain charisma about him that is irresistible and undeniable, and he looks cool and he looks handsome, and he's got that lovely hair and that wonderful, handsome, rugged type of face. Or not rugged, but it's a very clean, sharp-lined face, and it's perfect because it just has that perfect hint of danger, and there is a real menace to his character, but it is never to the extent of being scary, but it is always a seductive kind of menace, if you know what I mean. And that's a perfect counterpoint to the character of Musashi Miyamoto by this point, so Toshiro Mifune, who is not necessarily caring about his outward appearance per se. He is, by this time in his life, as depicted in this third film, he is not necessarily interested in gaining wins over his opponent. And we see that he has grown in terms of his own maturity and temperament, quite a vast difference from how he acted in the first film, and indeed from the second film. He is still quite a strong swordsman, and he does show himself to be quite valiant in battle when he needs to be. But by this time, he is also a very reserved warrior. He does not like to use force if it is not needed, and he seems to be trying to resolve problems through other means, perhaps less violent means. One of the most memorable scenes, of course, is how he wards off the threats. They come into his room, and this ruffian is threatening him, and he's just sitting there eating his noodles, and it's a bit of a dirty room, and this guy is threatening him, right? But all he does is just continues eating, and he just scoffs it off, and he shows his prowess, not by any show of force, but he is able to grab flies that are flying around the room with his chopsticks. The perfect image, the perfect encapsulation, I would say, of Musashi Miyamoto at this point, as depicted in this film. He is, of course, a highly trained and skilled warrior, so much skill, in fact, that he is able to grab flies in the air with his chopsticks. And yet, at the same time, this is his way of showing the force and power that he is capable of. Again, he shows his dominance by doing essentially nothing at all. And that is the perfect sort of way to resolve this conflict. He doesn't resort to violence, but he resorts through other means in order to resolve it. And it is resolved in a wonderfully potent and maybe even comic way. So that is just an example of the prowess of Miyamoto as we find him at this particular point in his life. And then, of course, there is the ultimate showdown between Miyamoto and Sasaki. And this has been building up essentially from the second film onwards. And we know that these two characters have been essentially on a collision course with one another. And they are to meet. And in fact, they are to meet at the aforementioned GANRYU Island. and they're to have their final duel to see who is the better swordsman. And this is something that, of course, Sasaki has challenged him earlier in the film, but for reasons that are clear, Miyamoto wanted to delay the fight, and it was delayed until this particular moment where we have this epic showdown between these two titans, these two legends. And my goodness, it is a truly suspenseful battle. It is not protracted, it is not overly long, it is quite brief, in fact, in terms of the context of the entire trilogy. But I don't know if that's a bad thing. I think it's quite appropriate in terms of the character of Miyamoto, at least how we find him. We see that it is not the fight that is necessarily important to him, and in fact, we do sense tinges of regret, of sorrow in Miyamoto. He is not the eager warrior that we see him to be in the first film, or maybe even in the second film. But he is still a dangerous warrior indeed, and he does go on to the beach of that island with that piece of wood. And so this is a wonderful contrast between two styles. We have Sasaki on the one hand on the upper part of the shore, seemingly with the upper hand, versus Miyamoto, who is stuck along the shoreline with his feet in the water and with his hands wrapped around this long piece of wood. And so we have these contrasts, both in terms of their narrative positions in this particular point in the film. They are antagonists, right? But not only that, they're visual contrasts to each other as well. And this helps us further, as viewers, to feel a sense of suspense and real eagerness to see the outcome of this truly awesome collision between two larger-than-life forces of nature, so to speak. And we also see, again, themes that have been established in the earlier film, namely that Miyamoto is a very intelligent fighter. He seems to be using his environment to his advantage. He's also trying to employ certain psychological means over his opponent. So he is a very intelligent fighter. He is not just a samurai with brute force on his side. No. He is a thinking person, and he obviously has some kind of strategy, and he uses the environment to his advantage in a very memorable way. This piece of wood is a very interesting thing. The one of the supplements here, which is by historian William Scott Wilson, he talks about the famous duel that takes place and about how Miyamoto is understood to have relied upon this piece of wood when he was fighting this duel with Kojiro Sasaki, and there are certain there are still certain aspects of history that are still left unresolved, but it's according to this historian, the way that he uses the wood is slightly different from the way he is depicted of engaging in a duel in this film, because if you recall in the film, there is also a key moment where he also relies upon his sword as well as the piece of wood. And according to the historian, the sword wasn't necessarily relied upon. Although the historian does seem to suggest that there is room for sort of interpretation of that historical event. The point, of course, here being that the film seems to take certain dramatic license, but I think to good effect, because it is a film, and it is a film that is starring two very handsome actors going at it, as it were. And this is a film that is a culmination of this series of films that forms this trilogy. So I think there should be this element of dramatic license and a way to heighten the drama. And we've seen this already in terms of the melodrama between the men and the women and Akemi and Otsu. So I think by this time we have already been conditioned to expect certain degrees of flourish, cinematic flourish. And indeed that is an example of the beauty and the power of the poetry of cinema. This is the end of the Samurai trilogy, and by my goodness, what a wonderful end it is. This film is thrilling, it is captivating, it goes off in ways that at the one hand they are tangential to the main thrust of the storyline. At the same time, however, they never feel superfluous. Everything feels connected, and organically so, and everything feels like a complete whole in a way that serves the function of the entire through line of the trilogy. And that is a feat. That is a true feat of narrative brilliance, if I do say so myself. It is incredibly entertaining and also a purely satisfying story with a plot that is intricate and melodramatic and sometimes a bit baffling perhaps, but it never lulls. There is a wonderful a serial-like quality to the story that just makes this film so engaging, and the time passes so quickly, and it's so easy to go into these films and to binge watch them and to watch the films one after another. A truly entertaining spectacle. Highly recommended. That is the Samurai trilogy, my friends. So what do you think of this film, and what do you think of the Samurai trilogy in general? Do you like these films? If so, please let me know down below in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this film, the third film, Duel at GANRYU Island, and any of the other films in the Samurai trilogy if you'd like. I'd love to hear what you think. All right, my friends, that is it. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Next time, I will be talking about spine number 17, which is the film Salo, or The 120 Days of Sodom. So until then, my friends, I hope you are happy and healthy and well, and that you continue to watch a lot of great films. And I look forward to talking to you again very soon. Take care. Cheers.